opportunities to improve from here, based upon the contribution and based upon the collaboration of the G20 summits. And there are lots of fields in which we can collaborate, such as trade and investment and the regional collaborations.
Well, there are a lot of topics for this year's G20 summit. I'm sure, Tomo, we were
much.
talking about it. Well, some say even too much.
Yes.
But some of the most crucial issues about the world economy, about trade systems, and about the geopolitics, even though it's not beautifully written in the theme, but everybody knows this is what's behind all the discussions.
Yes.
So in a way, when you have a lot of on the agenda, can these things be able to be tackled efficiently?
I hope so. I certainly hope so. And I think it's in a nutshell, we need international policy coordination. That has to be done collaboratively together with all participants in the G20 summit. And particularly China and Japan and the US can contribute much to the G20 summit here in Osaka.
And now we are watching live signals coming from the airport here in Osaka. Chinese President Xi Jinping's plane already arrived in Osaka. We are expecting some of the latest regarding the Chinese president's trip here in the city to attend the G20 summit. We will have it and we will bring to you. You're watching CGTN coming to you live from the city of Osaka, the host city of the G20 summit. With me once again, Tomo, who is an independent economist from Japan. Now, there are a lot of talks, but really how to implement the talks into real discussions.
Yes.
And discussions about policies. I think, Tomo, that's what people are really interested in, whether these state leaders will be able to make it happen from 0 to 1 in a way.
That's $1 billion question to me.
It is probably a $1 trillion question. Yes, indeed. But think about this. China, Japan, first of all, one, a developing country, emerging economy, the other a developed economy, certainly have a lot to work on when it comes to trade and cooperation, because both subscribe to multilateralism and both are against protectionism.
Right. Yeah, in fact, trade is always a two-way collaborations, and taking advantage, comparative advantage. We both gain. We sell and we import, we buy. These are two-way collaborations always. So there is always a way for everybody to achieve a win-win solutions.
Yes, we hope that will be the case.
Yes.
Win-win solutions. Talking about the win-win solutions, the Belt and Road Initiative, some say, is a win-win solution. It expands its breadth and also depth. These Asia trade pattern, especially the competition concerning the division of labor between China and Japan, has changed a lot over the years. And so Japan's attitude towards the China proposed Belt and Road Initiative is crucial. Our Ho-Na explains.
Japan has been voicing its openness to the Belt and Road Initiative since May 2017. Abe said earlier last year that Tokyo would, quote, probably respond to individual cooperation programs related to the initiative that aims at achieving common development. Analysts say that under the initiative, third-party market cooperation will be a focal point in China-Japan collaboration. Abe then paid a 3-day visit to China in October 2018, the first by a Japanese prime minister since 2011. When meeting with Abe in Beijing, President Xi Jinping said China-Japan ties were, quote, back on track and gained positive momentum with concerted efforts by both sides. He urged Japan to play a more active role in the Belt and Road Initiative cooperation. Abe indicated that the BRI had great potential for development, including third-party collaboration. Experts say that with the government's attitude turning supportive, Japanese companies can start to find more direct ways of participation. Feasible areas of collaboration include infrastructure construction, high-speed railway, artificial intelligence, as well as energy exploitation. The Japanese media said Tokyo plans to work with Beijing on the initiative by financially supporting private sector partnerships. The cooperation will center on areas like the environment, industrial modernization, and logistics. Koyuyuki Soguchi, research director of the Canon Institute for Global Studies in Tokyo, said that economic interactions with China will expand business opportunities for Japanese companies. He says if projects with good intent are effectively implemented, they can be expected to promote the globalization of many Japanese companies whose response to globalization is delayed. Chinese Premier Li Keqiang made an official visit to Japan in May last year, the first by a Chinese premier in 8 years. Japan received Premier Li with the highest standard, and Abe accompanied Li throughout his visit. During Li's visit, China and Japan signed a memorandum of understanding on third-party cooperation. During Abe's October visit last year, the Japanese Prime Minister attended the first forum on third-party market cooperation. 50-plus cooperation agreements worth more than $18 billion were signed, an indication that cooperation in this regard is bound to become a new pillar for pragmatic cooperation. The People's Bank of China, the central bank, has also inked a currency swap agreement with its Japanese counterpart. The move is aimed at enhancing financial stability in the two countries and facilitating bilateral economic and financial exchanges. The agreement will allow the two sides to swap a total of 200 billion yuan, that's about $29 billion for 3.4 trillion Japanese yen, and vice versa. Abe has said he hopes his meeting with Xi Jinping at the G20 summit can push bilateral ties a step further and open a new era of Japan-China relations. 侯乃 CGTN, Beijing.
World leaders are also expected to discuss the big picture for the world economy. And this year, they will focus on finding a way out of unilateralism and protectionism. And China, as the world's second largest economy, has something certainly to say on this.
Whatever decisions will be made at this year's G20 summit, they will affect 2/3 of the world's population and over 80% of the global economic output. A number of thorny issues are on the table. First and most pressing is the trade war between China and the US. The battle between the world's two largest economies have put global production chains at risk. Agriculture, automobile, high-tech, medicine, and many other industries have suffered from market loss and increased costs, including EU and Japanese companies. The two sides have held 11 rounds of trade talks, but no deal so far. Next, eyes will be on the cracks in the European Union. Experts point out that anti-EU sentiment in member states has clearly increased. Italy, for one, increased its 2019 deficit budget to the equivalence of 2.4% of GDP, a violation of the European Commission directives. Spain has also vowed to do the same. France is planning to raise wages and cut taxes in response to the Yellow Vest protests. On a larger scale, the IMF predicts a slowdown of the world economic recovery. The organization has, for the third time in only 6 months, lowered global GDP outlook. It put the 2019 figure at 3.3% in a report this April. The report also warned that developing countries will be more vulnerable to the effects. At last year's G20 summit, China proposed its own plans to address these issues. Following consistent strategies of inclusiveness, openness, responsibility, and innovation, the Chinese delegation said G20 countries should work together for a stable and peaceful international environment, a win-win partnership, and more sophisticated global economic governance. 马克 CGTN.
That certainly is the voice coming from China, what China aspires to achieve. But what about the rest of the world? Can they really work together? With me once again, we have Tomo Nakamaru, an independent economist here in Japan. You used to be the former economist for the World Bank. What a pleasure to see you once again, sir.
Me too.
I think from 0 to 1, in order for the state leaders not just talk about principles, but talk about how to make it happen, is very crucial for the host country, Japan. Prime Minister Abe has been working very hard at this, coordinating also the state leaders from all countries. Do you think there's much hope and confidence that Japan will be able to at least play a constructive role, an instrumental role this time?
I hope so, and I think there is a scope for that. And as long as we commit to some kind of principle, like fairness or transparency and consistency, those kinds of international rule of laws are provided, then everybody would would agree to such common ideas and common goals. And there is I think this is going to be first opportunity for us to reap from here to the next stage. And I think there is a room for mutual gains in order to achieve, make the world economy better and safer, and make the world people of the world as a whole become more and more happier.
But of course, this is the very first year Japan to host as a host country for the G20 summit. We see a lot of shuttle diplomacy going on for the Prime Minister, but still the world is so divided now, some argue, as to where is the opening for all of these discussions?
That's a good question. I think it is going to take some time, but dialogue and in fact this kind of meetings, face-to-face meeting together with Mr. Xi and President Trump, those kind of face-to-face action and face-to-face interaction is going to be an asset for the futures for the world. I think as a whole.
Right. As you may notice, Moto, that both leaders are going to meet with the others in whether bilateral or multilateral format before they meet one another.
Yes.
Isn't that interesting? It seems that they are both trying to work their way and understand the other's opinions before they're meeting directly. So is this going to provide us more opportunity for the two to work together? In other words, under the G20 framework, will the two leaders having bigger opportunities to work together?
I think that's a good question, but I think it seems to me that irrespective of the way of a meeting, individual or regional or as a whole, it seems to me it doesn't matter so much. Only thing that matters is a principle for us to go together for the mutual prosperity for the world and mutual for the peace as a whole. That is a common goal, and that is common consensus that should be made.
You mentioned about two key words, prosperity and peace. Those two words are extremely important because sometimes people are so much into the daily issue that they have to deal with as crisis and forget about the bigger goals, which is really about peace, which is really about prosperity and everybody's peace, everybody's prosperity. And therefore, I want to ask you about this, about prosperity. Northeast Asia, China, Japan, South Korea has been establishing the free trade area, and it seems this mechanism has been working quite well. Meanwhile, RCEP is also an issue that many of the Asian economies work together. Can Asian economies, the cooperation among the Asian economies, provide some kinds of inspiration and aspiration for the 20 economy leaders coming here into Osaka? Tomo.
Yeah, I think that can happen. In fact,
that can happen.
Can happen. If we have a common interest, that is prosperity for the world and peace, world peace. That's our common goal. As long as we commit to it, we can collaborate regionally or individually, bilaterally or multilaterally. Either way.
And now we are seeing the Chinese President plane arrived in the city of Osaka.
Oh, really?
And of course, we are waiting for the more interactions the Chinese president will have with both the Japanese counterparts, certainly as the host country of the G20 summit this year, and also many of the state leaders present at the G20 summit. Chinese President Xi Jinping will have both bilateral and multilateral meetings here in Osaka, and so are many of the other state leaders coming from different economies, both developing, emerging, and developed economies. So now we are seeing the Chinese President Xi Jinping stepping down from the ladder at the airport and greeted by the host country's representatives. This is a very big occasion, of course. Everybody's looking at the G20 summit, hoping it's going to help us to clarify some of the issues the world is facing today. Certainly China, as the second largest economy in the world, will have quite an impact on the discussion. Certainly there's also bilateral issues the Chinese President Xi Jinping will engage in. This will be the 7th consecutive time for the Chinese President Xi Jinping to both attend and chair the G20 summit. And we are waiting for his entourage to leave the airport for the hotels. We understand that Chinese President Xi Jinping is arriving for the morning, and the US President Donald Trump, according to the official schedule, will be arriving later in the early evening of Osaka today. Of course, those will be also covered by CGTN as we have it live for you. Sitting with me here in our temporary studio here in Osaka on the side of the G20 summit, Tomo Nakamaru. Professor Nakamaru, earlier we are talking about this, how to make sure it will be an instrumental and constructive discussion, not just between China and the United States, but also all the state leaders that are coming. We understand there are different rounds of discussion these leaders need to attend. What do you consider as the most important topics among all these different layers of discussion they are going to attend officially?
I think the most important topic is G2 between the China and the US. How do they collaborate each other? How can they make a deal between them? That's going to be crucial.
Well,
and I think deal could be done.
What could be done?
Could it be done? I think, yeah.
It could be done. Wow, you're very
yes,
optimistic.
I think so.
There are different ways of looking at it.
As long as we have, some kind of, common goals.
Yeah, some say, well, as long as the two leaders agree to continue to talk from G20 summit on, that's already a success.
Yeah.
There are others saying, well, maybe some certain areas of the discussion can be challenging, but can be handled. You are even more optimistic than most of the analysts.
It will take time, though. But I hope it will be done.
It takes time, patience, and a bigger vision.
That's
of
correct.
course, for
That's
both.
correct.
And for the others as well.
Exactly.
Thank you so much, Tomo Nakamaru. Really appreciate it.
Welcome.
And that is all the time we have for this hour. Special coverage for the G20 summit from the city of Osaka. We'll bring you the latest from the two-day summit in the following days. Now, back to you, Han Deng in Beijing.
Thank you very much, Tian Wei, my colleague Tian Wei in the Japanese city of Osaka. Just to recap the highlights so far, Chinese President Xi Jinping has arrived in the Japanese city, the host of this year's G20 summit, and the event is set to open on Friday. CGTN will keep you updated throughout the whole event. You're watching Global Watch on CGTN. Coming up.